As autumn yields to winter, which already seems to have seized the day this year, the festivals of the season, Halloween, All Saints' Day, All Souls' Day, remind us of our human mortality. Many speculate about what might come next, some fearfully, some hopefully. But I long ago accepted mortality as the condition of our existence. And frankly, nature doesn't care whether I accept it or not. Nature will have her way with me, an improbable individual of an equally improbable species, living on an improbable planet in an out-of-the-way and inconsequential portion of the cosmos. Welcome home. Who am I to fancy that I might somehow be the special creation of an omniscient creator, destined for everlasting life because of the depth of my faith or the dignity of my works? I may consist of stardust, but that doesn't make me a star. If we mature, instead of just growing older, the evidence should be found in greater humility about our place in the universe and more modest expectations about our fate, our destiny in life. 25 years have passed since my oldest brother's premature death. Some of you will remember him, for he was president of this congregation for 2 or 3 years in the 1980s, back on Banning Street. And despite the passage of time, I can still remember vividly the hours that passed from the moment I received word of his death. I was in Dallas when it happened, until his memorial service 5 days later, the day before what would have been his 50th birthday. If I close my eyes, I can imagine where I was standing when I received the news. I can recall crying at the airline counter as I begged for a seat home early. I can recount what followed, almost in slow motion, and feel again the feelings that flowed through me. In shock and disbelief, I made my way home to Winnipeg, where I prepared to deliver the eulogy at his memorial service. Professor Don Bailey filled the pulpit for me at Arborg so that I could focus on family matters. And the evening before the memorial service, there was a viewing at the funeral home after family and friends had arrived from out of town. At the viewing, a well-meaning and religiously devout member of the family sought to comfort me with the usual platitudes about everlasting life and my brother being in a better place. I remained calm, but I wanted to object vociferously. I didn't believe any of the reassurances being offered, even as I sought to appreciate the kindness with which they were being advanced. And far from bringing me comfort, the insistence with which unbelievable hopes were being offered only served to irritate me. It was awkward. It was uncomfortable. And when I was asked to lead everyone in the Lord's Prayer, since I was a minister, the tension was only broken when my beloved mother, who was grieving the loss of her firstborn, leaned towards me and whispered, "Do you know that one?" I repressed a snicker. I took her hand in mine, and we prayed. It had been 20 years earlier, on another November day when my father died suddenly at the age of 54. More than anything else, it was his death that brought me back to the church, seeking both solace and a sense of meaning. Solace and meaning I could believe in. I found both, partly because our way in religion didn't compel me to believe what I couldn't in my heart accept to be true, but instead allowed me to question and to doubt, while offering support and encouragement. I became progressively more involved, as did my late brother, and my life took a turn in directions I couldn't have imagined. 5 years later, I officiated at my first memorial service as a lay chaplain for this congregation, and my path to ministry commenced. But to tell you the truth, I grieved for my father at every memorial service I led, no matter who the service was for. It became part of my healing, being present at the deaths of others, without presuming to tell people what they ought to believe, and without being required to express beliefs I did not hold on my own part. I dreamt about my father often, just as Carl Sagan dreamt about his parents, and I enjoyed those dreams because, like Sagan, I found myself seized by an overwhelming sense that Dad was still alive, that the reports of his death had been a terrible mistake. Then I would awaken to my disappointment, mourning his loss all over again. This occurred several nights a week at first, then lessened in frequency until at last I came to cherish the nights when I'm visited in my dreams by my father. And now my brother and mother too. And when I'm awakened, I no longer mourn their passing, but instead I lie in bed for a while and savor the dream. Like the great scientist, there's something within me that's ready to believe in life after death, and it's not the least bit interested in whether there's any sober evidence for it. But dreams are where my wishes unfold, not where reality dwells. As far as I can remember, I've never dreamt about deceased relatives who I didn't know in the flesh. Only the ones whose lives were already woven finely into my own. So I've never interpreted my dreams as messages from beyond or evidence of an afterlife, but only as evidence that I carry within myself the memories of those whom I have truly loved. And I'm grateful whenever they enter my consciousness, even if I'm asleep when they arrive. Their visits, weaving old memories into new understandings, have helped me resolve things that troubled me, such as when a recurring case of vertigo had led me to become an anxious flyer, which was a problem in my line of work when I boarded as many as 100 planes each year to head off to visit with Unitarian Universalist congregations across the continent. One night, Dad came to me while I dreamt I was on an aircraft in distress, in a serious storm. The plane was bouncing all over, and in my dream, Dad took my hand and said, "Everything will be all right," as the plane crashed into an airport terminal. I awakened feeling an indescribable calm, and the next time I flew, my anxiety was diminished. It wasn't gone, but it was manageable. And it is an act I could have imagined my Father taking in the flesh. Humans have undoubtedly speculated about life after death ever since they first began to treat their departed with reverence. But beliefs have been varied, and the answers to questions of an afterlife haven't been as singular and dogmatic as many would have us believe. The Hebrews appear to have had no such terror of death as certain Christian theologies have cultivated, observed William J. Potter, a 19th century Quaker turned Unitarian who was one of the founders of the Free Religious Association. Their system of rewards and retributions was practically limited to this world. For the greater part of their national history, they manifested no specific belief in immortality. For those who do believe that audacious promises of immortality have always been part of religion and part of every religion, this may come as something of a surprise. Potter believed that the Hebrews picked up the idea of immortality during their Babylonian captivity, that it was a response not to death, but to the dreariness of their condition. He encouraged free thinkers of his day, the last quarter of the 19th century, to be very modest not only in our affirmations, but also in our denials, warning against an incredulity that is the dogmatism of negation, which I do try to keep in mind as I indulge myself this morning in disbelief. I'm not sure Potter would have approved, but I am sure he would have understood. I've made my peace with mortality. I've even embraced it. And I've given up on whatever lingering vestiges of belief in immortality I may have once had. I'm content to live the one life I have to live, and let others live theirs without insisting that they put in some sort of celestial overtime when their life's work is done, just as I have no interest in a second shift of my own. Truth be told, I'm a little frightened by the alternative. Does not eternity appear dreadful to you? Asked Emily Dickinson. To think that we must forever live and never cease to be? It seems as if death, which all so dread because it launches upon us an unknown world, would be a relief to so endless a state of existence. Yet most people have difficulty imagining a future in which they do not exist, even though few of us have trouble accepting a past, all the years before we were born, when we didn't exist. Millions long for immortality who don't know what to do with themselves on a rainy Sunday afternoon, quipped novelist Susan Ertz 80 years ago. Not so Liza Hamilton, a character in John Steinbeck's classic novel, East of Eden. We all know someone like Liza, perhaps many people like her. Some of you may even be a Liza of sorts. She overflows with traditional virtue, loving her husband and their brood of 9 children, feeding them, clothing them, and cultivating good manners and iron morals as they grew towards adulthood. According to Steinbeck, she looked forward to heaven as a place where clothes did not get dirty and where food did not have to be cooked and dishes washed. Privately, there were things in heaven of which she did not quite approve. There was too much singing, And she didn't see how even the elect could survive for very long the celestial laziness which was promised. She could find something to do in heaven. There must be something to take up one's time, some clouds to darn, some weary wings to rub with liniment. Maybe the collars of the robes needed to be turned now and then, and when you come right down to it, she couldn't believe that even in heaven there would not be cobwebs in some corner to be knocked down with a cloth-covered broom. As it turns out, Liza's imaginings about life in heaven offer the perfect formula for living well the one life we know we have to live. Why not devote ourselves to those tasks we find more pleasant and find efficiencies for the chores we find more onerous? Why not pursue vocations that grow out of our gifts and interests? Why wait for heaven? In fairness to Liza Hamilton, most of the tasks she dreaded have been lightened by technology through the invention or at least enhancement of tools and appliances. But new technologies are often accompanied by higher standards and new expectations, which undermine what appears at first to be an advance favoring leisure. Moreover, many of the technologies of leisure themselves become new time sinks that rob us of what we prize most, our time. But enough about Facebook. Our time in this life is precious, especially for those who believe, as I do, that we have just one life to live. Far be it from me to tell others what makes life fulfilling. But it seems to me that worthwhile work, meaningful relationships, and restorative leisure, however a person defines these things for themselves, are at the heart of any life lived well. Yesterday, Cindy and I attended a memorial service for her Auntie Faye at the Manitoba Buddhist Temple. The service felt both familiar and comforting. After 45 years of these services for Cindy's rather large extended family, the liturgy warms my heart, even though I hardly understand a word of it. In fact, that may help. It may be the very fact that I don't have to sit and parse and critique the words of the liturgy that allows me simply to immerse myself in it. The rituals feel right to me, and the reverence transcends language. It needn't be expressed in words. Yesterday's Dharma talk, what we might call a homily, touched me deeply, even though it was built around a simple children's story by Leo Buscaglia that Reverend Yoshimichi Ouchi had shared with him as a child. It appears to be more popular in Japan than anywhere else, perhaps because it resonates with Japanese spirituality and its alignment with nature. It's deeply Buddhist and Shintoist at the same time, naturalistic and humanistic. In a nutshell, 2 leaves on a tree emerge from buds in the springtime. One of the leaves loves life and all it offers, while its best friend seems more aware of the nature of existence, explaining their place in the larger scheme of things. They danced on the branches throughout the spring and summer, relishing in the company of other leaves and even the visitors to the park. As autumn arrived, the leaves changed colors, taking on beautiful, vibrant hues until some began to fall to the ground. Having discovered death, the first leaf expressed its fear of it, hoping it might escape the fate that awaited it. The other was more philosophical. Some leaves are, explaining that change comes to everything. Will we return in the spring, the first leaf asked. I don't know, but life will. Life lasts forever, and we're part of it, came the response. Leaves are here to enjoy the sun and the shade, the breezes and the calm, even the company of friends and other life forms. So are we. In this allegory, the first leaf was the last to fall, and as it did, it saw the whole tree for the first time, remembering its companion's assertion, life lasts forever. In death, as in life, we are all a part of nature, and that's immortality enough for me. In silently contemplating the transient nature of human existence, nothing is more fragile and fleeting in this world than a human life. Life swiftly passes, wrote Jonasson, a Buddhist sage from the 15th century. So by understanding the meaning of death, we shall come fully to appreciate the meaning of this life, which is unrepeatable, and thus to be treasured above all else. Each of us, you and me, is unique and unrepeatable, worthy to be treasured during the one life we all know we have to live. Please join in hymn number 1054, Let This Be a House of Peace.